Today we're going to talk about response to child sexual abuse and exploitation. So the question I'm asking today is, what are we missing in how we record, recognise and respond to child sexual abuse and exploitation? And there's two recent publications that bring this question more sharply into focus. So we've got the latest report from the Department for Education, and that was March 2026, that explores how child sexual abuse and exploitation is recorded within children's social care, as well as how serious incident notifications are applied. And then alongside this, we've got the CSAE Centre's research on child sexual exploitation, which offers really clear, practice-focused messages for those working directly with children. Now, when you bring those two together, they don't just highlight gaps in systems, which we're really used to highlighting, of course, but they point to something deeper. And that is our understanding, language, and professional confidence, and the way that it shapes what really becomes visible to the system. So it's humans interacting with system, I guess. Now, recording is never neutral. Recording shapes what we see, and the DFE research draws attention to significant variation in how child sexual abuse and exploitation is identified and recorded across local authorities. And there's many strands to bring into this, as you can imagine, but what stood out for me is this, and that is that recording practices are influenced by local thresholds, professional judgement, and system structures. So you could have the same child with the same experiences, but they could be recorded very differently depending on where they live. And what is recorded ultimately determines what's counted, what's analysed, what's prioritised. So this matters, because if something's not consistently recorded, it risks becoming invisible in the data, even when it's present in practice. And because we already know that child sexual abuse is significantly underreported, to the extent that only a fraction of cases reach statutory systems, it leads us on to this brand new question, which is whether our systems identify harm or simply fail to name it clearly enough. And the Child Sexual Abuse Centre's research identifies that child sexual exploitation rarely presents in kind of neat or obvious ways. So instead, we often see changes in behaviour, patterns of going missing, relationships that feel concerning, but that's not always evidential. And we have the unmet needs that sit beneath the surface. And their work reinforces that indicators are not proof, but they're prompts for professional curiosity. And this is where practice can become uncertain. And when professionals are unsure whether something meets the threshold, in inverted commas, the risk is that concerns are recorded inconsistently, language becomes watered down, and crucially, children's lived experiences are not then captured. And the DFE report also explores how serious incident notifications are applied in child sexual abuse and exploitation cases. And this recognises an uncomfortable but necessary reflection. And that is, which children's experiences are recognised as serious enough to trigger national attention? If identification and recording can vary locally, then so too will the decisions about escalation. And this creates a system where similar harm might lead to different levels of scrutiny. Learning opportunities might be missed, or uneven, patchy national understanding becoming fragmented. But across both pieces of research, one message comes through clearly, and that is that there is a persistent gap between children's lived experiences of sexual abuse and what is recognised, recorded, and responded to. And we see that reflected in wider research too, suggesting that far more children experience abuse than are currently identified by services. So what about bringing this all together and its relevance for reviews then? In reviews, this gap will often become visible in hindsight, because we have this opportunity to pull everything together that nobody had before. And we can see when patterns were present but not connected. We can see when language softened the reality of the harm. And we can see when children's voices were heard but not fully understood. Okay, so what does it mean for our safeguarding reviews, our domestic abuse related death reviews? Well, for some of us involved in reviews, this research offers some important prompts. And our prompts might be, how was abuse described across agency records? Were indicators recognised early or only in hindsight? Did recording practices obscure patterns over time? And how did system structures influence professional judgment? And perhaps most importantly, what would this child's experience look like if we stripped away all that system language and then just truly centred their lived experience? And if we're going to strengthen our response to child sexual abuse and exploitation, the learning here is not just about better systems. It's about consistency, curiosity, and confidence. So our learning improvement work is there to support practitioners to name concerns clearly, even when evidence is incomplete. Because ultimately, children don't experience abuse in categories or in thresholds. They experience it in real time, in real relationships, and often in silence. And our role is to ensure that what they experience is seen, named, and responded to consistently without hesitation. And that takes the system to remove a level of fear that a practitioner may experience.